Good evening and welcome to night 5 of the Grand Slam Fallout Bars, brought to you in partnership with our friends at BoyleSports. Dan, I'm not messing up this time. I'm down in nice and early with it, so I don't forget.
Well played.
Mr. Simpson, how you doing on this fine Wednesday evening?
I am very, very well, Mr. Boyce. I am very well indeed. Do you know what? Another apps. We've struck dead lucky this week. We have just. This is our second night on the bounce, and we've hit yet another night of absolutely top class darts. I would say from virtually everybody that took to the stage tonight, we've seen a performance in one way or another. Absolutely superb stuff this evening. Highly entertaining. Some twists and turns, and some amazing finishing, and some really, really top level stuff. I think we've been very lucky once again tonight.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Just before we delve into the action, just say hello to a few people who were in the chat room nice and early. G's in, Jay's in, Bob's in, someone told Dan Simpson's in, Bob, Lewis, Jack Curtis, Preston's just joined. Evening to everyone else who is in. And as you mentioned there, Dan, we've been quite fortunate. It's our second night of 3 the two of us are on, and the first 2 nights that we've been on, it certainly delivered, and some. Last night to me was an outstanding night, one of the best group stage nights that I can remember for a while. I don't want to say it was the best ever, because we've seen some fantastic stuff over the years at the Slam, especially on that Monday, Tuesday, but it was a very good night. And then tonight has delivered it then once more, and what a perfect way to start with 2 legends of the sport who are still delivering at a top level, maybe not as consistently as they have done before, but we've got a 5 times world champion in Ryan van Barneveld and a PDC world championship runner-up in Simon Whitlock go head-to-head in a first game, which was very, very good throughout, Dan, and it just looked, it delivered on what we wanted. There was a fear that there's an inconsistency with both players, and there was a fear that maybe not have then delivered with a hype that we've got when you see the name on paper. But for me, this one fully delivered from start to finish.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think you're dead right. There was a risk with this game, and I think that's potentially why we saw this game first tonight, as big as those 2 names are, and as much history that is attached to this fixture. There was a risk that this game or this match could have underwhelmed. We're not quite sure at the minute which version of either of these players we're going to see, and we saw an absolutely cracking game, a proper slobber knocker, backwards and forwards. Lots of twists and turns, some amazing stuff in there. And Barney coming through at the end will have pleased an awful lot of people. Simon Whitlock, I think, was unlucky in the way that the game panned out. He got off to an absolutely flying start, which I think he needed to if he was going to push this game, because I think what we've seen just from the mentality of Barney this week is composure. And we saw that again tonight. He remained very composed throughout most of the fixture, certainly the first 2/3 of it. So Whitlock did everything he needed to do in getting out of the blocks quickly, but the consistency over that longer format that we talked about yesterday, and extending this up to the best of 19 was with the Dutchman, and Barney just dug in and hit a very consistent level throughout the game. Stats weren't stunning. There was no huge checkouts from Barney. Did throw the 6 180s, but the average wasn't it was nothing really to write home about, 97.4. But just a very, very good even match that was thoroughly entertaining.
Yeah, we've done our predictions last night, and you've got this one right, I haven't. But if we was to have the chat during the game, or I was to say to you that Barney would be behind early on, and when we're 10 leads apiece, it's the first time that Barney's really levelled up because he'd been behind in the game. I'm not sure people associate very often the fight back in Barney that we've seen tonight and the temperament. I know you mentioned that word as well while you was talking about the game, but for Barney to come back into it from a very good Whitlock start, and then, yes, Whitlock died off, but still had them finishes towards the end. Was it back-to-back 112s or?
Yeah, there was a 112. Was it 2 in a row? Yeah, and he certainly.
Sorry, it wasn't back-to-back. It was on throw. It was his 2 leads on throw. So on throw he hit 112. Barney then won a lead on 13 darts. But then Whitlock hit another 112 to level it up at 8 apiece. But normally at that stage, we'd see the head shaking. We'd see the Barney sort of, I don't want to say giving up, but losing that bit of interest. But tonight, we seem to have a different Barney.
Yeah, and it was. I tell you where I thought my prediction was completely in the mud. Was that seventh leg tonight, when Whitlock broke Barney for the second time and went 5-2 up, and at 5-2 up, even in a longer form game, it did look a long way back at 5-2, and then straight off the back, all of a sudden, Barney wins 4 on the bounce, took those 2 breaks back, leveled up at 5-all, and as soon as when he had that 4th one on the bounce, went to 6-5, and that put the game back on throw. So after that, Barney looked a little bit more comfortable. Whether or not that's because the game was on throw, and he knew that really he could serve the game out to a degree, and he just had to keep holding. And he didn't lose another game on throw after that. Once he'd leveled that up, and I did think at 5-2 Whitlock was going to kick on a bit, but he just found something there for those 4 legs on the spin, and Barney really, really turned the game around. Really good stuff. Certainly mentally, the composure he showed was very impressive tonight.
Yeah, good thing about us now being into knockout stages, and Mr. Barter is working behind in the background. I am pleased to say that we have got clips from all 4 interviews already in the back end, so we will be hearing from all 4 winners on tonight's show. So let's start off with our first winner this evening in Raymond van Barneveld.
I think it's really important to have a rest day tomorrow. Sleep well tonight and do some things for the press. And then tomorrow maybe go Birmingham, have shopping, have some lunch, and enjoying. I'm really enjoying. I'm for the first time in my life, I'm enjoying the game. And even would have lost this game, I will say to Simon, well, all credit because he played amazing tonight. Averaging 102, and wow, how good is he? And it happened for him. But I'm also struggling, If you look back last year, Pro Tours, grabbing points, then they got me in, and I'm in the quarterfinals. And then the belief is there. I can go all the way as long as you believe in yourself and you keep on hitting these triples and doubles.
Just one clip, just one sort of quote from that, Dan, before we move on to game number 2. Raymond van Barneveld saying, "I can go all the way." We've not heard that for a while.
I thought you were going to say that he's going to enjoy a day out in Birmingham after that. But, no, absolutely, and he did. He said, I said to you last night when they did that Sky Sports piece where he was with Polly by the canal, 2 or 3 days ago now, and he made a comment about his aim through this tournament and the Players' Championships finals was to get himself a seeded draw at the World Championships. I was thinking, well, I said that. I looked at I had to check the order of merit a couple of times and think that's top 32. How's he going to do that? But clearly his mindset is that he's convinced himself he's going very deep in these next 2 tournaments, and so far he is proving that his mindset is matching his game, or he's got the game to match the mindset, and he's doing a cracking job so far. Really, really is.
He certainly is doing just that to defy a 101 average from Simon Whitlock to progress into the last stage of a quarterfinal at the Grand Slam once more. And then moving on to game number 2, which was we have 2 All-English affairs in the last 16, and one of which is between Michael Smith and Rob Cross. And it was Michael Smith who got over the line in this one, which was a topsy-turvy battle, Dan. And it was Bully Boy just getting over the line, with both players averaging, both players on a 50% check-out percentage, which for me is a very good sign for both Bully Boy and Rob Cross. But Michael Smith got over the line with a 10-8 win.
He did, and it at no point did he and he did. Michael played great, 50% on his doubles, but so was Rob Cross, both at 50% on the doubles tonight. And Michael did play very well, but Rob Cross, I thought, played excellently to keep pace. What Michael couldn't do right up until he he won the match really at the end was he couldn't quite get Rob Cross at arm's length. He did come out quick, and he got up to that 4-1. But after that first break, it just looked like Rob was gonna hang in there, and he did exactly that. He just kept fighting back, and he had to really play some very impressive stuff. 8-1-80s, I think it was, without flicking back and having a look.
Yeah.
So I think Rob Cross did 8-1-80s. But he was having to do that to keep pace with Michael Smith, and he couldn't quite get close enough early in the game. And then once they got that leveled up at 8-all, I think that was where we'd hit the point where the game could have gone either way. And it was sort of who had the biggest set, I think, at that point when Rob broke to level the game up 8-all. And I worried a little bit for Michael at that point. I thought that was, that break could have been huge. But Michael Smith, we talked a lot about Barney's mentality, and I know that Michael Smith's get questioned, but dug in and immediately responded with the break back so that he could just save the game out in the end. It was a really interesting game, and I think certainly at 8-all, I thought we were definitely going all the way. And Rob Cross, certainly when that last dart went in to level that up, I thought Rob Cross was the favourite for that match there. I thought he looked like he was the player that was going to get the job done. Michael Smith did, though, just hang around in there and just had that extra little level at the end.
Yeah, and before we go on to more about Michael Smith and him going on to potentially progress further in this tournament, just on Rob Cross, we've seen some fantastic stuff with him winning the European Championships last year. Obviously, he's a former world champion as well. But for him to fight back to 8 apiece deserves an awful lot of credit in a game that, yes, that was the time it was then a bit topsy-turvy before that Michael Smith was in control. But looking at that 17th lead, Rob Cross on throw started with a 1-3-4. But then these are his scoring visits after that before Michael Smith broke. 60, 100, 51 and 11. A scoring visit of 11 in a crucial lead when you've got to 8 apiece. Where obviously we know the game that Rob Cross has got and we know the capabilities that Voltage has. However, that is a worrying sign for me when you've been able to claw yourself back, and then Michael Smith's broke with a 14-dot lead, which of course is very impressive, but there's no pressure applied really by Voltage.
No, and he did. It was almost like he sort of, looking for the right words, but because the only one I've got is a bit graphic. He'd done his money, so to speak. It seemed like it took everything he had out of him to get that game leveled up at 8-all. And after that, he fizzled out very quickly. And it was as if he drained himself a little bit, and it took every bit of game that he had to get that up to 8-all. But then didn't have anything left in the tank after that. He'd sort of exhausted himself with it, and Michael was able to, he did do it with came back at him with a 14 data. But you're right, there was no pressure at all, and Rob did fizzle away a little bit after he levelled it up.
Cullen, we accept your apology for running a bit late. However, you've timed it just right. If you want to hear from Bully Boy, as I mentioned, we've got clips tonight, so Let's hear from Michael Smith, who got over the line with a 10-8 win against Rob Cross.
Yeah, no, but he did it with the 160. I thought, this is straightforward, this. Wide the tops, and then the 136, I thought, it's a bit late in the game to be setting up here while I'm on 136. And I hit the treble, he was plumb, and I literally just went into treble one. I thought, you muppet, but no, he tried it, but luckily enough, I got the win then.
A few years ago, was something like that annoyed you?
Well, he annoyed me today. No, man, a few years ago, but no, I had to try to keep me cool. Scratch my head, I don't know if it's cut now, but literally dug the darts in my head, just try to keep myself calm, and yeah, managed to fall over then. I don't think it's important. I think I say in every interview, I've done it with Phil, I've done it with Dave, I've done it with everyone. As soon as I win the major, that's the past and it's gone. I'd love to have one, and I will get one, no doubt, but I never ever look back. I always look forward. So soon, if I win this, go into the world, it's a new tournament. I'm not going to say, oh yeah, I've won 4 Pro Tours, European, I've won hopefully the Grand Slam, won the Players. Win a new tournament, doesn't matter what you've won, it's a different day.
You believe that?
Do I believe that? No.
No, I don't. I mean, I'm glad he's saying it, because I think he's saying it for himself rather than everybody else. I think it's like a mantra that he's like chanting to himself to program himself into how he needs to approach things.
Dan, just one thing. I'm the host. I'm meant to put you under pressure. You're not meant to throw it back my way. I wasn't expecting that. That's not fun. No, I'm with you. I don't think it was. I think it's saying the right things and it's coming across with the right sort of persona. But I think as soon as, let's say, Michael Smith does and wins the World Championship this year, I think we'll hear him mention that in a lot of interviews if he was to win it, as does everyone else, because that's something that you've deservedly won and then you can hold on to. I don't think it'll be something that would be pushed back. I think it'd be something that he would gently remind everyone that he's now a major winner or TV winner, whatever we want to say for that. But Michael Smith did progress through against Rob Cross in a difficult tie, and then we moved on to Danny Noppert and Gerwyn Price. And Dan, you've done it plenty of times before, whether it be social media or doing the report. When you are doing anything sort of as a journalist as such and writing something up, you tend to be a bit ahead of the game, so you try and predict a little bit what's about to happen. And when Danny Noppert is so far in front in this one, was it 7-4? And I was doing a little bit for OD as per that I had the 2021 World Grand Slam champion knocked out at that stage. Gerwyn Price. We spoke yesterday as well. We spoke just before. We spoke yesterday about the bottle of Nathan Aspinall potentially being one of the best in the world. Having that bottle coming from behind and that fighting spirit. Is this man number one now, Gerwyn Price?
Tell you what, it was just. First of all, you give me a right chuckle there, because I've been in that situation where something absurd's happened, and I've put a message down on WhatsApp group. I'm going to have to rewrite the report now. I was 2/3 of it written up. I had the headline sorted and everything. I mean, it was the performance from Gerwyn Price was, for the vast majority of that game, I would say, quite forgettable for the vast majority of it. And then all of a sudden, and this is, being honest, that is the difference between people who have the ability to win major titles in all sports, is that they can find that extra gear and they can find that will to win at the right time. He broke Danny Noppert twice in the last 3 legs there. To come from what appeared absolutely nowhere at 7-4, I thought it was done and dusted. I really did. When Noppy broke him again at 7-4 up, I just thought this is because the way that Gezi was playing at that point, he showed no indication of what he might have up his sleeve and what he might be able to come and do. And then, by goodness, did we see a resurgence towards the end. And I've got to say, I know that we have seen some very impressive combination finishing in this tournament so far. We've seen Luke Woodhouse slip in the big fish. We've seen some very clever and cool stuff from Alan Suter, but that 164 was absolutely unbelievable. And I think because it's impressive in itself, and of course it is, but the situation in which that came, and the way that his back was against the wall, and how much he needed that in order to get through into the next round of this tournament, for me, just makes that sort of the finish of the tournament so far for me. It was just a level, and it's champions being champions, and that's how people become world number one. Is being able to take, probably playing somewhere between your B and your C game for most of that, and looking nowhere near, and just turning it on when it mattered.
Yeah, I'm with you. This is a guy we need to remember who a couple of days ago was on the brink of defeat and was Dave Chisnall let's be honest, should have knocked out Gerwyn Price, and Gerwyn Price should have been out. We then saw, for me, I had it down as, believe it or not, I do make some notes, Dan, but I had it down at 6-4 when Noppy went into the break, 6-4 up, and Gerwyn Price hit bullseye. So he left 75 with 2 darts in hand and hit bullseye down for 25 ball, which for me was a mistake, as I think he should have done treble 17, knowing how good his double 12 hitting is. And I saw that as being the sort of the turning point of the game at that point, and I thought that Noppy was then going to go on and be successful, because as well the start afterwards and down 7-4 up. But as you said, I can't disagree with you. Yes, we've seen 160, we've seen a 170, we've seen some other brilliant checkouts along the way. But for me, that 164 at the time it happened,
that's what adds to
it. That last year moment, as the Fallon sort of 170 moment was so big, not because it was a 170, but the timing of it. For me, that 164 was just huge because of when it was to level that game up at 8 apiece, when he was 7-4 behind. It was just so good from Gerwyn Price. We will touch a bit more on this game, but let's hear from the man himself before we do so.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's just coming from the short period of experience I've got in the PDC, but I know it's like to lose. I absolutely hate losing, and I'll give it my all right to the end. And yeah, it's just I'm never beat till our last double goes in, but I never used to be like that. Things have changed over the last couple of years, and I just never give up until, like I said, the last double's in and I'm out. I think she knows what to do. I mean, she's probably had as much, if not even more than what I've had, so maybe she should give me some advice. But it's a tough world out there. You're out here to earn a living and you're out there to do a job, but there's always critics, no matter how good you are, how bad you are. But yeah, I do really feel bad for the way she is and the way people treat her, but it's life and you just got to deal with it.
Yeah, two parts of that clip really. One's about, he's talking about his bottle, and I think we've already alluded to that and what he's shown today, then standing up and what he showed previously. Second part to that, I know her name wasn't mentioned, but he was asked a question around, he was talking around Fallon Sherritt and sort of the pressure, and we'll only touch on this very shortly, Dan, because it's not to do with tonight's action and stuff, but as Des mentioned it in his interview. I'm not sure if you've seen the clip as well from Fallon in regards to her interview with Sky Sports, where she's mentioned it, but there's a lot of pressure around Fallon at the moment, and or at the moment it's probably unfair. There always is, and Desi's alluded to it there. He probably lets it more than anyone else apart from Fallon. So for me, that's a good thing that he's willing to speak about that and share that sort of the abuse and the levels that he gets from, not just from the fans in the arena, because that Fallon doesn't really get that as much, but more from what you see and what you get from social media and from pundits and critics. Yeah,
it's a really challenging one, isn't it? And yeah, I do think he's probably one of the, he's one of the few people in the sport of darts that gets it, on par with what Fallon gets. For me, it's incredibly difficult because it's one of those things where it shouldn't happen. and it shouldn't be something that we have to talk about. But it is just the world that we live in, and there's very little that any one of us and any organisation or any sport, in general, can do to combat it, because the sport is wonderful because it engages with people on so many different levels, and it engages with people all over social media. It engages with people on all sorts of different media outlets and podcasts and television reviews and things like that. But with that comes the other side of it that you can't really police and you can't really avoid. I think all that needs to happen is I do think that she needs to get I'm sure she does get some, but I think the organisers of the sport have some responsibility to make sure that she gets as much support as possible in dealing with that. And that where it can be, she's protected from it in terms of how it's filtered and what she does see and what she doesn't see. It's very easy to just say, well, I won't read the papers, I won't go on social media. Well, yeah, you shouldn't do it, should you? Like, that shouldn't be the way that you have to move through your life. The frustrating thing and the slightly sad thing about it, just before we move on, is that I'm not convinced that the situation that she's in terms of the abuse and the crap that she gets through social media and other channels, it has quite hit its peak yet. I'm not sure that it's sort of hit a ceiling and that's it. I think depending on what various things that could happen over the next 12 months, it could increase even more, which would be a terrible shame. But it's a slightly negative view as well. But I don't think we've quite reached the ceiling of it.
Yeah, which is a shame if that is the case. However, back to tonight's game. As I said, we alluded to it because Desi mentioned it. I'm sure we'll talk about it more on the live lounge next week. But going into then the final game, and we saw the knockout stage get underway tonight. So the first half of that was decided by Joe Cullen getting over the line against Duijvenbode, and we will touch upon our predictions. Dan, I'll round them all up at the end, and we'll make sure we cover them off. And I can see the smile on your face already. But one thing that neither of us expected with this game was it to be as one-sided as what it was. And Joe Cullen, average-wise, doesn't probably suggest that. But for me, that was a very, very good performance by Joe Cullen. And 95 doesn't really show the levels he was at throughout the main period of that game.
No, it didn't, and it looked at times. It was a bit strange because if we're really honest and we talk about as it was, I was really shocked when I looked at the fact that Dirk van Duijvenbode threw a 93.5 average, because it didn't feel like that at all. Watching the match, it felt like that average would have been 7 or 8 points lower than that. He just didn't turn up tonight. It didn't click for whatever reason. He couldn't play himself into any type of form and play himself into that match at all. Now, again, you still, for Joe, you've still got to hit the doubles, and he did well, and he played well. He did some very, very good things. I think for lumps of the match, it looked quite pedestrian and I think that's just the way it appeared, because there was very little getting thrown back at him. Dirk did find that break in the 12th, but it was at that point so he was so far behind. When he found that break, he was 9-2 down, going to 9-3. So it was a mountain to climb from that point. But you can only play what's in front of you, and it was I use the phrase quite often. It was a professional performance from Joe Cullen, who turned up and threw his darts, probably not as well as he could, but threw his darts well, did some good things. The 129 was very nice. He checked some big checkouts out, and he looked impressive. I don't know how much he'll take from that game, because because he didn't really experience a lot of pressure. He hasn't come through adversity. I think, we've talked the first 3 games tonight. We've talked a lot about people sort of coming through adversity and fighting people off and things being topsy-turvy. And I think those other 3 players have come through the mill a bit and battled their way through the trenches into the next round. Joe Cullen has just sort of turned up and thrown his darts and found that he's done enough. It just wasn't. It wasn't competitive enough because we just didn't see the best from Dirk van Duijvenbode, sadly.
Yeah, I'm just gonna pop into the chat room and then come back with a question before we hear from Joe. Bob's mentioned here Dirk never turned up and was letting more angry with himself when he and the throw then got worse. Jamie's mentions Dirk had a shot on doubles early doors. With sort of those comments and just thinking about what Dirk's achieved, his greatest achievement has come when we didn't have the crowd in, and I know now we fully backed into that. Other than obviously your Pro Tours, you backed into the crowds in there. Do you still think there's question marks in Dirk staying on TV in front of a full audience?
I mean, it's a bit of a strange one because the facts speak for themselves, and he hasn't been able to reach the level with full crowds on television with the consistency that he could reach when we had empty stadiums or on the Pro Tour when he's behind closed doors. And the facts speak for themselves. So it's quite easy to just go, oh yeah, that's the case. But then what then I think the counter argument against that confuses me a little bit is like, you spend 3 minutes and you watch the guy's entrance and you think that's not a bloke who's uncomfortable in front of a crowd. And it's a real straight because like if you look at the facts, it says there could be some question marks there, but then you watch him walk out and he's raving and jumping and shouting and screaming. What I think is. I think it's a bit of a combination because we've seen some good performances from him in front of a crowd. I can't remember where he went deep in something. I can't remember which one it was, but he did go deep in something on the television. And what I think is when he's playing well in front of a crowd and his first 3-4 legs go well, his first set goes well, then he feeds off the crowd a little bit and he can kick on. I think when it doesn't go well and there's a crowd in, it sends him the other way. And I think I think that the effect the crowd has on him is very much dependent on his first 4-5 legs on the stage. And he can either come out of the guns or come out quite fast and it lifts him, or he can come out quite slow, not quite get where he wants to be, and it gets on top of him a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. As mentioned, he has been to a Cups finals, one with an audience, which was World Series and Grand Prix that wasn't. But the question was more around the performances. I don't think have just been as good as, yes, he's got to a final in front of a crowd, but the level of performances just haven't been the same. We've now just got a short clip from Joe Cullen, and then we'll look back on our predictions from last night and move into tomorrow night's predictions. Let's hear from Joe first.
Dirk's been playing fantastic all year. Even the games that he loses, he seems to play well, and it's ironic. I was just going to say that he doesn't really give you many games, but I think tonight, he just won't like to say anyone gave up, but as I was looking at him in the break and things like that, and he just looked despondent and like he looked like he gave up, to be honest. But that's for him to say, not me.
I don't know. Yeah, he's sort of arguing with himself there. I'm not going to say he gave up, but he did give up. But I'm not going to say it. Very good, Joe.
Yeah, I get what he's saying. I don't believe that Dirk gave up, but what he does do is, was mentioned in the chat room, is he seems then to try too hard, and then he gets a bit demotivated by that level. So. This is the part which I know you've looked forward to, because I had a text message off you after game number 3, I think it was, when we said we would do a prediction over the last 16 games, as we are both on for the last 16. So starting with Barney versus Whitlock, Dan predicted 10-6, and I predicted 10-6 Barney. I predicted 10-8 Whitlock. So certainly 1 point there for Dan. Second up was Michael Smith, and we both predicted the win. 110.6, 110.7. So I finally got one on the board. Took me just till Dame 2, but I got one on the board. Dame number 3, I thought I had this one in the bag with Noppy, especially 10.8. I thought that was looking very, very close. I think 8.6, and I think if then those we throw, obviously Noppy would have done over the line in that one, but 0 from me in that one. And you got this one spot on, Dan. 10.8 for Desi. And then the final down the night, I'm sure there was a swear word in there, so I won't repeat it. But I just needed Joe Cullen to get over the line in his last one, and Joe Cullen certainly did do that. I predicted 10-7, as I said. I think I'd be very surprised if many people out there predicted Joe to win by much more. Before we go into tomorrow night's predictions, Dan, I've mentioned it on socials tonight. We mentioned it last week on the live lounge, and I think it was mentioned as well when the draw was made. One of the downfalls of the Grand Slam, yes, there's the talk about the WDF, BDO, seniors, all these sort of different organisations that didn't come in, like we've had before in PDC and BDO. But one thing that really hurts a lot of people and really frustrates a lot of people is you can have repeat matches very, very quickly. Yeah. And it's no fault of the players. Obviously, how the draw and the format is done by the PDC. But what we've seen tonight is that Joe Cullen and Michael Smith have progressed, and Gerwyn Price and Barney have progressed. And both of those two dames we have already seen this week. And for me, that is just a little bit too early to see a repeat of a dame. Yes, you can see in the semi and the final, but to see it then already in the quarterfinal just 3 or 4 days after their first game just doesn't feel right to me, Dan.
No, I couldn't agree more. It's probably the only element of the tournament that I really don't like. You know, I love a lot about the format of the Grand Slam. I really do. I love that round robin group stage. Because it's different. I like this time of year in darts where we get that combination of tournaments that are match play tournaments where people are just playing legs. We've got some set play on the horizon, and then we have this little anomaly of the Grand Slam that just something a little bit just changes up the format a little bit. I really enjoy it, but that for me is the only flaw. And there are a number of different ways you can do it. You can just simply change your draw around as to where your bracket goes in the end, and you just change one letter along, and all of a sudden everyone has to play somebody different, and there's potential to meet semi-final, final. If you wanted to completely randomise it, you just do an open draw at the quarterfinals.
Yeah,
and people will like that or not like that, but you might get it, you might not. But it's the one thing that I dislike. Like I am a bit irked, if I'm honest, that you know the 2 quarterfinals that we know about, we've already seen. There is a little bit in there. I know there's a lot of people that quite like it. Like I know that there are Gerwyn Price fans that are over the moon that he gets to play Barney again, because there is that little bit of that spot for revenge, and there's that, you know, there's the rematch almost, and there's people that think it's great. It's not to my taste. I'd rather see that probably another stage along the tournament, semi-finals at least.
Yeah, I think for me, how the group works, how the formatting works, with them now having a day off in between the last 16 and the quarterfinals, the only way it can work is that if the meta then in the semi-finals, if that was to happen, but you've got to win 2 games then to get to that. But if you'd have just separated A to D up in this then next game, you would have been able to do it. And you still have your 2 halves, so you can't meet someone in the opposite half until the final. So there's no other route to that. But for me, it's just got to be in the semi-final. I understand your point in regards to a sort of an open draw, quarter-final, semi-final. The only thing for that is I just think yes, it's a day's rest, or it's the following night, but you could potentially have someone not play for 2 nights. How that would work, you'd have to look at the format.
Yeah, it is. You've got potentially people having no days off and some people having extra days off.
Yeah,
but it's just where you balance that, isn't it? It's what the appetite is from the PDC as to how they want to do it. Me personally, I'm not over the moon with the current format I'd like to see it mixed up ever so slightly. I don't really know. I have no preference as to how it is, as long as it's not how it is now.
Yeah, and we'll preview tomorrow, but one thing that's certainly come to mind straight away is Gerwyn Price told out Raymond van Barneveld about playing. He can beat him over the short format, but he'll never get him over the London format. Or we only have to wait a few days for that, and we'll have a result on that in a few days. But we'll predict that one tomorrow night. This is where everyone in the chat room, we want you to get involved, throw your predictions in. I've got my workings out here that Dan, I've did you 2 points for a threat result and one for a threat. Sorry, one for a threat result, 2 for a threat score. So you're 4-2 in front going into tomorrow night's predictions. And we start off with a surprise last 16 in Jermaine Wattimena and someone who got through the very last game last night in Nathan Aspinall. They will open up tomorrow night. Where are you down with this one, mate?
I think it's going to have to be Aspinall, and I think he's going to get it done in relatively comfortable fashion. I don't think it goes too far to the wire. I think it's Aspinall 10-7.
I need to get some points back on the board here, but I think this would be very, very foolish of me to do this so early on. Jermaine Wattimena, what did you say? 10-7 was that, Dan?
10-7 I went for, yeah. 10-7.
I think Jermaine Wattimena is playing very well at the minute. A toss this weekend. He's storing power's good, and for me, he'll need to create as many chances as possible at the doubles, because that's the downside of his game, to get the better of Asp. I don't think he will. I'm just going to go one more. I'm going to go 10-8 the Asp in this first one, and the Asp will get over the line. But I do think Wattimena is playing well enough at the minute to push him, and there is a possibility there of the upset, but I just think that Nathan Aspinall will get over the line. Game number 2, this one, don't want to be disheartened to that first game, but these next 3 really excite me, and I'm looking forward to all of these. Johnny Clayton versus Alan Soutar, and the form that Alan Soutar's shown this week. Johnny Clayton not hitting the heights in regards to average and scoring and check-out wise that we've seen before. For me, made this one a very, very intriguing tie.
It does, but my prediction. So, like Alan, I've really enjoyed watching Alan Soutar on the telly again. I think he's a great addition to these big tournaments on the TV. He's a great personality. I do think though that Johnny is due on, because we haven't seen him highlight checkouts and we haven't seen highlight real Johnny Clayton so far. And I think he's due, and I think he's had a day off, and I think he's going to come out tomorrow with the Johnny Clayton we all love to see on the television. And I'm going to go Johnny Clayton 10-5.
Just before I give my mistake, just in the chat room, we had on the first game, Jack went 10-7 the Asp, Birdie Boy went 10-5 the Asp, Colin 10-5 also the Asp, Bob 10-6, HH Stuck 10-5. So quite convincing wins. We've actually been nicer to Wattimena than anyone else has in the chat room, Dan, and gave him 7 and 8 leads. But then we moved on, and Jack's done for 10-5 Clayton, HH Stutt's on 10-8 Soutar, and Bob 10-7 the Ferret. This is where I'm going to go against you.
Interesting.
I'm really excited about the games on tomorrow night. One of the reasons for that is because I'm there on Saturday. I've got front row seats for Saturday's action. So the winner of Thursday night's games, I get to see on Saturday. And I've just got this sneaky feeling that we're going to see them tartan trousers on Saturday night, and that Alan Soutar will progress through against Johnny Clayton. I think I'm going to go for 10-8 the Suits. That's over the line in that one. Game number 3, and this is the tie of the round. It has to be tie of the round. Michael van Derven versus Josh Roth. This has so much. The game for me depends on what Josh Roth can turn up, because Michael van Derven is going to turn up. The form he's been in this year, he's going to turn up. If Josh Roth can perform half what he's done this week and anything what he's done really across the year, this could be a classic, Dan.
Yeah, I'm genuinely looking round to, like, toss a coin in the. I feel like that it could be 9-9 and either one of them get the last one, or it could be a 10-5 either way of one of them just absolutely hitting their stride and go like. Oh, but like I do think, and it's probably against half of Planet Darts at least at the moment, because and Josh Rock is a talent. He is very much a big talent, and he is a name for the future. But the future isn't quite here yet. And what's here yet is a very, very on form and dangerous-looking Michael Van Gerwen, who I think is going to be more up for this match. I think Michael Van Gerwen knows and hears every whisper and talk about Josh Rock, and he's going to want to send a message tomorrow that I am still Michael Van Gerwen and I am still the best darts player on the planet. And I think it's going to be 10-7. Nearly went one less there, very nearly. 10-7, Michael Van Gerwen.
I've just built this one up as being a classic. I think it's going to deliver. I really do. Bob mentioned there the experience of MVG. There's the majority of the chat rooms down for MVG 10-5 there. Colin's done 10-9, Bob 10-7, and Jack Dowen 10-8. Josh Roth. I think that just experience gets him over the line in what will be a great game, with both averaging in and around that 100. MVG slightly over for me. Yes, he'll want to smash Josh Roth. He'll want to set that sort of early precedent of a TV game and getting over him that well. But I'm going to go all the way. I'm going to let my heart roll my head in with odds to the scoreline, and I'm going to say just more on a hope than an expectation, Dan, that we get 19 legs of darts between MVG and Josh Roth, because I think that would be absolute fireworks. But I do think MVG gets over the line. And then this one, if you think that one's impressive, this one isn't far behind at all. Yes, the dame of the round for me is MVG, Josh Roth, but it is very closely followed just because of the recent performances and the recent form of Ross Smith and what Luke Humphries has done on the Euro Tour. This one could be a cracker as well. Without a doubt. And for me, this is the hardest one of all of the round of 16 matches to pick. I think, right, for me personally, I think it's right on a wire, this one. So this is the game that I am going to go 10-9 on, because I do think it goes all the way. And I'm going to surprise myself a little bit, because I normally back the other guy whenever I do a prediction. But I'm going to go 10-9 Luke Humphries. I don't pick Luke a lot, and he often makes a fool of me because I don't pick him a lot, and he wins a lot, and he normally makes me look daft. He does do that. He certainly does do that. You know what? I've just looked at my results, then what I've predicted for tomorrow night, and it's 10-8, 10-8, 10-9. And you know what? I'm going to stick with that sort of mindset that tonight, it is tonight now, we've just turned midnight. Tomorrow night, we are in for a classic night, and it's rounded off with Ross Smith getting over the line in a 18 or 19 legs. You know, let's do for 19 legs then, and let's do for Ross Smith getting over the line in what will be a cracker. And I think it sort of sums it up. I'm just going to reel off a few predictions in the chat room, Dan. Lute has done for... Jack has done for 10-9 Lute. Preston has done for 10-9 Smith. Bob has done for 10-8 Smith. Everyone is going for that sort of over 17. It is, I think, to everyone that watches us, this is, I think, the MVG Rock game. I think we all know we're going to see some really impressive darts. But I also think that whilst Josh Rock is brilliant, if A-game Michael Van Gerwen turns up, like, that isn't on paper the closest game we're looking at. I do think the way these two players are playing,
on form, this is the tightest game that we've got in this last of 16, the hardest to pick, the closest to a 50-50, I think, that we've got.
Yeah, it's going to be a great day. The names that are in there, the players, we know that. For me, those last three really, really stand out. But we know that Nathan Aspinall loves to be in a battle. So there's no surprise there if that goes deep, because that man just seems to always be in some sort of battle. So I think we've got 4 names there that are teed up perfectly to there are then final 8 and go into the quarterfinals that weekend. Dan, thank you very much as always for your time. Chat room, thank you very much for everyone joining us late on this Wednesday evening. And as always, thank you for BoyleSports for their continued support. For all the interviews that you've heard the clips of tonight, they are now available on our YouTube channel. Phil doing a great job in Wolverhampton, getting those interviews for us. So head over to our YouTube channel now to listen to the interviews from all 4 winners this evening. Thank you very much for your time all. And me and Dan will be back tomorrow. And with Dan 4-2 up, who will come out on top on the predictions, Dan? See you tomorrow.
Good night.